1 inch from the blue tape, her right foot trembles. Her phone flashes, "Access revoked, M. Grant," as the boardroom doors swing open. "Step," Micah whispers, and the world decides which way she falls. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe, tap like, and share this video. The more voices we reach, the louder these stories become. And drop your city in the comments. Let's see where love finds us. The building exhaled its last daytime breath at 11:03 p.m., and then the night machinery took over. HV, a steady drone, elevators whispering like patient ghosts, emergency lights blinking, a red metronome down glass corridors. On the 50th floor of Aurelius Tower, the corner office was the only room still lit, a warm aquarium in a sea of midnight. Micah Grant angled his cleaning cart around a marble pillar, the wheels quiet from the oil he'd layered over them himself. The cart carried everything he needed: spray, rags, a long-handled duster, and a dog-eared binder of kinesiology notes wedged between the mops. He stopped at the sliver of light beneath the corner office door and listened. Paper rustled, a pen tapped. A woman sighed, long and stubborn. He knocked. "Come," the voice said, cool, tired, commanding by reflex. Micah nudged the door open with his shoulder and rolled the cart in. The office stretched like a runway, wall-to-wall windows throwing back the city's glitter, a table that looked like it had been carved from a single tree trunk, art that cost more than cars. Behind the desk sat Victoria Hale, 35, blue-chip beautiful, thick and curvy, in a fitted charcoal sheath that refused to apologize for her body. The chair beneath her was not leather, it was titanium and carbon fiber, the wheelchair gleaming like a stripped-down sports car. "Sorry to intrude, Miss Hale," Micah said. "I can circle back later." She capped her pen. The engagement diamond on her right hand, pure branding, not a promise, caught the light and threw it back like a blade. "You'll be circling forever. I'm not leaving tonight." "Board meeting?" "Hostile bid," she corrected, a sharp little smile that didn't touch her eyes. "And a room full of men who smell blood. What they really smell is fear, and fear excites them." Micah nodded once, as if she'd told him the weather. On her desk, 2 amber pill bottles, a cooling espresso, printed projections with red notations in a precise, impatient hand. On her face, the trained neutrality of a woman who'd been taught to win as if it were breathing, and who for months had been fighting her own body for permission to exhale. He took 1 step closer. On a scale of 1 to 10, pain? A flicker crossed her features. Irritation, surprise, maybe the memory of how good the question felt the first time someone honest asked it. 4, she said. She paused. Sometimes 8. "Medication schedule?" Another flicker. "I'm not paying you to assess me, Mr. No," he said, calm. "You're paying me to make your flaws shine. But I'm asking because if you're at an 8 later, your decision-making will tilt. It's not weakness. It's chemistry." Silence, then a reluctant concession in the angle of her chin. 4 now, she repeated, softer. Maybe 5. He set the brake on the cart and glanced at her posture. Shoulders elevated and tight, pelvis posteriorly tilted, a rigid upper spine that carried too much of what the lower refused. He said, "If you lower the desk, you'll drop your shoulders 2 centimeters and your breathing will deepen." She arched a brow. 2 centimeters? Is that the official janitorial measurement? "Physical therapy," he said. "I'm finishing my degree at night." He caught himself and added, "Because men like him rarely got second chances if they overstepped. May I show you?" Victoria's gaze held his, assessing for threat, for agenda, for anything but what it was. A question offered without demand. She pressed the height adjuster switch. The desk hummed down. "Now," Micah said, "inhale through your nose and think about filling the back of your ribs, not the top of your chest." She did, wary at first, then again with curiosity. The air moved differently. The tight band across her mid-back eased a fraction. Her eyes lowered, surprised and annoyed that relief could be this simple. "Better?" he asked. "Perhaps," she said, which in her dialect meant yes. He pointed, not at her legs, which were guarded territory, but at the space between shoulder and ear. "You've been carrying your whole day up here." He relaxed his own shoulders to demonstrate. "You're strong, Miss Hale. Sometimes strength is letting something drop." "Strong," she repeated, tasting the word like a vitamin she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. "Is that what you tell your clients?" "I mop floors," he said, "and I tell the truth." She looked at the pill bottles, then at him. "You said you're studying physical therapy. Spare me the brochure. Every specialist with a waiting list has told me the same thing. What's the thing? That this is as good as it gets. Her voice didn't crack. Victoria Hale didn't crack. But somewhere inside it, a seam showed. L1, incomplete, fracture with cord contusion, we've plateaued. He took that in without flinching. Incomplete means messages still get through. Sometimes, she said, sometimes not. Sometimes is enough, he said, as if he were stating a street address, if you want it to be. Her eyes cooled. Don't sell me hope. I can buy whatever men sell. Then don't buy it, he said. Build it. He shouldn't have said it. He knew the script. Say sir, say ma'am, say nothing at all if the air stiffens. But something about the way she sat, in a machine that had saved her life and stolen her certainty, made him skip the script. What accident? He asked gently, not prying so much as setting a hand on a door she could open or not. Helicopter, she said after a beat. Mountain site visit. Pilot's error, then wind shear, then a very long fall. My board hired a crisis firm before the second surgery. She forced a tight smile. It turns out you can trend for both stock performance and vertebral fractures. He didn't smile back. I'm sorry, he said, because there was no other honest first sentence. My lawyers prefer congratulations, she said. I survived. You did, he agreed. Now the question is how you live. Something, maybe that he didn't ask for permission to witness her pain, maybe that he didn't look away, shifted again. And your question for me is... He set both palms lightly on the edge of her desk, the way he'd set his hands beside a patient's knees. Ready, not invasive. Let me help you walk. The room stilled. The city lights threw thin gold bars across the floor. The HVAC hummed like a held breath. You're serious, she said, not incredulous so much as testing the word for strength. Yes. You're a janitor. I am. He didn't step back. I'm also 3 practicums from my license. I did 4 years as an army medic before that. I know how to listen to bodies everyone else has given up on. And what do you want in return, Mr. Grant? Her gaze sharpened. This was the part of the meeting where men told her their price. Hours, experience. Your case is complex. It will make me better. If that sounds self-serving, know that I'll serve you in the process. Brave pitch, she said. Reckless, too. Cautious hasn't gotten you where you want to go. The corner of her mouth betrayed her with a flicker of amusement. You don't sound like a man who wipes fingerprints from glass. I wipe a lot of things, he said, and when a laugh almost escaped her, he added softly, including failure off the floor so the next try doesn't slip. Silence breathed again. Outside, lightning stitched a thin seam in a far-off cloud. Inside, Victoria looked at her hands. The immaculate manicure, the faint tremor that had begun around month 2, the way her ring finger pressed the pen to keep it from shaking. She looked at the chair that had become both her lifeline and her jailer. She looked at the man who had walked in with a mop and handed her a sentence she wanted to believe more than she dared. What would it look like? She asked at last. Not a miracle, he said. A schedule. Mornings, before the building wakes. Neuromuscular re-education, breathwork, sensory mapping, visualizing before moving. We chart everything. No heroics, just work. Your team stays looped in. I don't replace your doctors, I add. Risk? Frustration, he said. Plateaus, people talking. They talk anyway. She rolled back from the desk an inch. The chair's tires hummed on the carpet. Do you always make offers as like this to executives with hostile bids and terrible insomnia? No, he said. Only to the ones who want more than surviving. The clock on her wall clicked from 11:09 to 11:10. Victoria Hale, who could buy companies by breakfast and crush rumours by lunch, faced a decision no press release could manage for her. For 6 months, doctors had managed her expectations until they were small enough to fit inside a discharge summary. For 6 minutes, a man with calloused hands had widened them until she could almost see a hallway she hadn't let herself imagine. 6 a.m., she said, as if assigning a meeting to a subordinate. If I hate it, we never speak of this again. 6 a.m., he agreed. And if you hurt me, she added, not a threat so much as a vow to herself, I will end you in ways your union rep can't imagine. He grinned, quick and clean, and it did something unhelpful to the soft, guarded part of her. Fair. He pushed the cart to the door. His hand on the knob, he paused. Miss Hale? Yes. 2 centimetres, he said, nodding at the desk. Keep it there. Breathe into your back. Sleep will come closer. When he left, the office felt different. Not lighter, exactly, but less airless, like a window had cracked somewhere she couldn't see. Victoria lowered her desk another fraction. She inhaled through her nose, filling the back of her ribs the way he'd instructed. Something unclenched. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply sat with the fact that she had said yes to something that wasn't a merger or a fight. At 11:27, she capped her pen and turned off the lamp. The city's light took its place. In the glass, her reflection looked back, a thick, curvy, unapologetically sexy woman in a machine that promised nothing and had kept her alive, a leader who had been told as good as it gets and had just quietly refused. 6 a.m., she told herself. A number, a dare, a door. The building was a different animal at 6 a.m., not the prowling predator of midnight, but a long-limbed thing stretching awake. Cleaning crews finished their graveyard circuits. Security swapped seats. Somewhere, a bakery timer dinged in the lobby cafe. On the 50th floor, the corner office light went on and made a bright square in the sky. Micah arrived with a canvas duffel slung over one shoulder and a folded therapy table under the other. He knocked once and let himself in when Victoria said, "Enter," the syllable crisp, like she was trying it on for control. He set the table by the windows and opened the duffel. Resistance bands, soft foam wedges, a reflex hammer, a cheap metronome, nitrile gloves, a stack of graph paper templates clipped to a board. He moved like the room had rules, and he respected them. The way he had in tents that smelled of antiseptic and dust, the way he did in homes where grief sat on the couch and stared at the floor. Victoria rolled closer. Up close, the chair was a precision instrument. Carbon spokes, raven black frame, quick-release wheels that looked like they could outrun rumours if rumours were physical. She wore a cream silk blouse and a pencil skirt that hugged her hips, unapologetic curves arranged like a dare. Her hair was swept back. Her mouth was armed in a colour that could have been called war briefing. "Ground rules," she said before he could speak. "My schedule is non-negotiable. I don't miss meetings, I move them. You sign an NDA. My medical team is looped in, and if you say the word miracle, this ends." "NDA is fine," Micah said. He set a slim packet on her desk with his signature already on the last page. The pen line was neat, practiced. "Your team can get everything, and I don't use miracle. I use measurable." Her gaze shifted to the graph paper. "What are those?" "Score sheets," he said, almost cheerful. "We're going to be boring, Miss Hale. Boring is how the impossible gets done." She almost smiled. Almost. "You're going to regret inviting my boredom." He wheeled the table so the long edge was parallel to the window, then slid the transfer board into place. "Consent check," he said. "I'll cue every contact. You tell me stop, slow, or more. Pain over 7, we pause. Over 8, we stop. Agreed?" Her jaw eased a fraction. "Agreed. Ready? Do it." They worked as the sun lifted behind the far bank of glass towers. He guided her hands, then her torso, then one controlled lean that let her weight glide from chair to table. He kept his voice low and factual, the way you talk over a ledge. He braced her shins with a rolled towel, set her head on a wedge, and started with breath, because breath goes everywhere nerves forget. "In through your nose," he said. "Back of the ribs. Think of the air widening you. 3 counts in, 4 out." She followed. On the 4th cycle, her hand stopped clenching. "Now sensory mapping," he said. He ran a soft cotton square from her knee to her ankle. "Tell me when the texture changes." "Here," she said at mid-calf, surprised. "I didn't think—" "We're looking for the maybes," he said. "Your brain maps territory it believes it can own. If we give it accurate borders, it builds roads." He tapped lightly with the reflex hammer along L2 to S1 dermatomes. He watched her face more than her legs. He made notes without dramatics. When he touched the right big toe, her mouth tightened. "Pressure," she said. "Not pain. Pressure." "Good," he said, and wrote it down. "Pressure is a door frame." They moved to muscle activation. He placed 2 fingertips along the tendon at the top of her ankle. "Don't move yet," he said. "Just think of moving. Visualize your foot pulling toward your face. See the path. Neurons are lazy, but they love patterns." She rolled her eyes, but she did it. For 20 seconds, nothing changed. For 21, still nothing. He didn't rush. He set the metronome to a slow tick and had her link breath to beats. In, 2, 3. Out, 2, 3, 4. Again. "Now intend," he said as the second hand on her wall clock cleared the 12. Not the whole movement, the beginning of it. She concentrated, every line of her face an order to the universe. Nothing. And then the faintest flutter beneath his fingertips, a shy lightning under skin. He didn't move, didn't gasp, didn't spook it with triumph. He felt it once, then again a whisper of dorsiflexion, the body saying maybe in a language that had been all no. He looked up. She saw it reflected in him. Did, she asked, the word a wire. You did, he said, and let himself smile. Twice. Her eyes filled so fast it startled her. She blinked hard, furious at the wet, and lifted her chin like a captain in a storm. It could be artifact. It could, he agreed gently. So we'll find it again, and again, until it's not. They did. 5 more attempts, 2 more whispers, 1 more that was not a whisper, but a brief, decisive hello. He logged them in ink, the colour of ordinary. He wrote the time. He wrote the conditions, breath cadence, desk height, the exact degree her pelvis had tilted when the 3rd success occurred. He wrote like a man leaving breadcrumbs for someone who might be lost tomorrow. When he lifted his hands, the metronome kept ticking. She stared at her foot like it was a kingdom she'd ruled once and had just glimpsed from exile. She exhaled. It trembled. And then, God help her, she laughed, a sharp breath that cut and healed at the same time. Don't congratulate me, she said quickly, even as heat moved across her face. Don't you dare. Noted, he said, and set a mug beside her. No logo, no apology, steam curling from the lid. This is for the tremor. Sugar steadies adrenaline. She eyed it, then took a sip, vanilla, faint. Cinnamon, a kindness she almost resented. I hate that this feels like hope. Feels like data to me, he said, and she let that be her shield. By 7:10, he'd measured range through both hips, trained 2 new breathing patterns, mapped a grid of sensation she hadn't looked at in months, and given her 3 home drills she could do without ever leaving the chair. He left a 1-page program, Hale Protocol V.1. At the bottom he'd written 2 centimetres in tiny letters. What is that? She asked, finger on the words. Your desk, he said, your shoulders. The distance between as good as it gets and let's see. We're not moving mountains, we're moving 2 centimetres. I buy mountains, she said, dry. I negotiate continents. Great, he said, this is cheaper. At 7:18, the door opened without a knock. Mara Quinn, chief of staff, hair in a razor bob, tablet under one arm, a venti everything under the other. She stopped abruptly, taking in the table, the bands, Micah's gloved hands. The calculus on her face was swift. Optics, liability, headlines. Good morning, Miss Hale, she said carefully. We have legal at 8:30. The Morrison team moved their call to 9. Push legal to 9:15, Victoria said, voice steady in a new way. Tell security to add Mr. Grant to my trusted list. He'll be here daily. Mara's eyes travelled from Victoria to Micah. Her smile never touched her pupils. Of course. When the door shut, Victoria said, They'll talk. They already do, he said. Give them something useful to say. She smirked despite herself. You're too quotable for a man who uses a mop. I prefer broom philosopher, he said, and that laugh almost escaped again, traitorous, alive. He helped her transfer back to the chair with the same unshowy care he'd used earlier. He stowed the table, wiped down every surface he'd touched, replaced the rug edge exactly where it had been. He didn't try to shake her hand when he left. He didn't do triumphal. He only paused and said, Rest 10 minutes before your day steamrolls you. Your nervous system is making expensive purchases. Micah, she said, his name landing in the room for the first time from her mouth. It sounded like she was testing the fit of it. Thank you. He tipped 2 fingers in a not-quite salute, not quite anything else, and left. Alone again, Victoria set the brake on her chair and looked at her right foot. She imagined the map of her body, roads closed, roads under construction, roads that might be reopened with enough petitions and stubbornness. She breathed into her back the way he'd taught her. She read the words 2 centimetres until they stopped being quaint and became command. Mara returned at 7:32 with a stack of folders and a practised calm. Media's sniffing around, she said. Kite Capital leaked the bid price to force the board's hand. I assume we fight. We do, Victoria said. She adjusted the desk down, felt her shoulders drop, felt her ribs widen, felt, God, space. And we win. The morning ran like a drill. Numbers, names, narratives, she could do them in her sleep. But the edges were different. When a rushing heat rose under her skin, she caught it sooner and breathed into her back until the room steadied. When a familiar spike of pain tried to write the agenda, She set it at 6, then 5. When Kite's counsel implied that leadership meant standing, she smiled with all her teeth and used the word outmaneuver 3 times in one sentence. At noon, between calls, she looked down and tried again. The room was quiet. The city was a glitter of angles. She pictured the tendon at the top of her ankle and thought begin. Nothing. Then a flicker, then another. Hello, she thought, and didn't say it out loud because it wasn't for anyone else to hear yet. She made it through the day on coffee and a metronome pulse she kept secret in her chest. At dusk, when the glass caught the first blue of evening, she texted a number Mara had added to her phone. 6 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. The reply came immediately. Wouldn't dream of it. Micah rode the elevator down with the duffel digging into his shoulder and the table knocking his leg. In the lobby, the cafe smelled like fresh brioche. He bought 2 because some victories deserved sugar, even if you refused to call them that. Outside, the city had shrugged on its weekday pace. He turned right toward a bus stop and left toward the day campus, then chose neither for a block and just walked, letting the morning cool bite his face. He could still feel the tiny surge under his fingertips, the body's Morse code, a message in short, stubborn taps. I'm here. He didn't think miracle. He thought myelin. He thought repetition. He thought about the time a corporal in a tent had made the same small movement after 6 weeks of nothing, and how after that it had become a bridge, and after that a step, and after that a story told at a wedding by a man who cried into his own punchline. He stopped at a corner, dug out a pen, and added to the top of the program sheet in his mind. V0.2, add mirror therapy. He pictured the next set of grids, the next 2 centimetres, the next ordinary morning where something extraordinary would try again. Up on 50, Victoria Hale finished a call, set down her tablet, and placed her palm lightly on the glass. The city vibrated under her hand like a living thing. She had thought power was pressure, pressing, pressing, pressing until the world bent. Now she wondered if power was sometimes permission. To breathe, to try again, to let a different kind of strength count. She looked at her foot and didn't ask if it would move. She invited it. Somewhere inside, something listened. And for once, the future felt less like a verdict and more like a corridor with the lights just beginning to warm on. The third morning began with weather that couldn't decide. Rain chewing at the edges of the sky, sunlight muscling through in slivers. Victoria had slept 4 contiguous hours for the first time in months. She didn't tell anyone that. She raised the desk 2 centimetres, then dropped it again, amused at her own obedience to a scribbled note. Micah arrived with an extra bag and a square of something wrapped in towels. He looked more awake than a person at 6 a.m. Had any right to be. New toy, he said, easing the towels back to reveal a narrow mirror mounted in a simple frame. Low tech, high yield. If you pull a rabbit from it, I'm firing you, she said. No rabbits, he said. Just brains. He positioned the mirror between her legs so that when she looked down, her left foot reflected where her right should be. Mirror therapy. We let your brain see success, then ask it to copy its own lie. Magic. Myelin, he corrected, cheerful. Trust me, the brain loves to be fooled for good reasons. They ran a quick warm-up, breath into the back ribs, shoulders dropping, diaphragm free of the executive clench. He cued the transfer, palms, lean, glide. On the table he placed her left foot where her right foot's reflection would be, toes pointed up like a small salute. Eyes on the mirror, he said. Watch your left toes flex. Tell your right to match. She watched. Left toes moved, confident, ordinary. In the mirror, the right followed easily. Of course it did. It was the left. Her actual right foot lay quiet behind the glass. She breathed in on the tick of the metronome and out on the next 4 beats, the rhythm turning fear into something you could set a watch by. On the 6th cycle, something in the right foot answered. A faint pull, not artifact, not mercy. She felt it as pressure, then as a small, clear word. Hello. Her breath hitched. She forced it steady. Again, she said. Again, he echoed. They repeated until the word grew less shy. Micah didn't praise, he recorded. He shifted the mirror a millimetre to avoid false positives, tested light touch along her shin, tapped tendon, returned to breath. He made boredom into ritual, ritual into progress. You're infuriating, she said at one point, sweat at her temples, eyes still on the mirror. You refuse to be amazed. I'm saving that for later, he said. When you want to stand me up at a wedding and I get to cry like a cartoon uncle." She snorted, then cursed when her ankle trembled in a way she couldn't control. "I hate not being the boss of my own foot." "You are," he said, spotting her frustration even when she camouflaged it with sarcasm. "You're rehiring it after a long suspension." They moved on. He sat her tall and placed his fingertips along her lower ribs, a respectful, clinical contact that felt like a hand on a light switch. "Balance," he said. "Your core wants to dump backwards. We invite it forward." She fought every instinct that told her vulnerability was a crime, leaned into the sense of falling, found herself held, by the table, by her breath, by his voice narrating the difference between surrender and collapse. At 7:02, she discovered a strip of sensation along the outside of her right calf she'd sworn hadn't existed since the helicopter. She blinked hard and stared at the ceiling until the feeling sorted itself into acceptable categories. They were still working when Mara slipped in without fully entering, the diplomat's trick. "Kite bumped their offer," she said, eyes flicking to the mirror and back. "They seeded a rumor to a blogger. Anonymous staffer says the CEO is experimenting with incorrect therapies at odd hours with colourful company." Micah didn't flinch. He was a man who had been called worse by people bleeding on his boots. Victoria didn't flinch either. She was a woman who had been told worse by men who wanted her job. "Draft a statement," Victoria said. "No defensiveness. We affirm that I am in an evidence-based rehabilitation program supervised by my medical team. We emphasize function over optics. We do not use the word miracle. We do use work." Mara hesitated. The colourful company part. "Mr. Grant is an Army veteran finishing a clinical degree," Victoria said, flat. "If they can't handle that sentence, they can invest elsewhere." "Yes, ma'am," Mara said, retreating to make calls and presumably several enemies. When the door clicked shut, Micah set the mirror aside. "Want to stop?" "No," she said, and meant it all the way down. "Let's make them regret being awake." They shifted to hip flexion. He cued her to imagine lifting her knee to the ceiling while he placed his palm just above the joint. "I'm not testing your strength," he said. "I'm giving the movement somewhere to land." 10 minutes passed like one long argument with gravity. Her hip gave her a rumour of a lift, then another. Each time, he caught it with a soft pressure that told her body, "Here." She hated how much she liked the way he said good, not as victory but as coordinates. At 7:19, he sat back on his heels. "One more set," he said. "Then I want to try standing." Her stomach went cold, then hot. "That's theatre," she said, hearing the fear and hating it. "It's scaffolding," he said. "With guards, with me." He wheeled in a mobile standing frame, all aluminum and straps and blunt promise. He explained every part, every buckle, every stop. He asked for consent twice, then a third time because her eyes were doing a thing her mouth wasn't saying. She nodded. He slid the transfer board, guided her weight, anchored her knees against padded blocks. "Breath," he said. "Back of ribs, 2 centimetres. She laughed, shocked to hear it so close to tears. "If you say 2 centimetres over our graves, I'm haunting you." "Good," he said. "I'll bring a metronome." He eased the frame upright in rushated clicks. The world tilted. She grabbed the handles out of reflex and then felt his hand on her forearm, not restraining, just available. The frame took weight. Her bones said a shy yes. The room rose with her. Air changed in her chest. "Stop," he asked. "Not yet," she said. Her voice didn't sound like a CEO's or a patient's. It sounded like a person doing something new. They held there, 10 seconds, 15, 20. Her quads sang an old song. Her lower back complained, then negotiated. Her eyes found the window, the city unspooling below like a living schematic. She had stood 1,000 times in public. None of those counted as much as this private 30 seconds. He lowered her with the same care. None of the triumph she feared would break the moment. On the way down, her right knee quivered and then steadied. She let herself feel that without naming it a victory. When she was seated again, she wiped her face without apology. "Again tomorrow," she said, breath raw, "and the next day." "And the next," he said. He packed with ritual neatness. At the door, she said, "Micah." He turned. "Why this?" Her voice softened into something she reserved for truth or danger. "Why me?" He could have said the thing about experience, about licensing hours and complex cases. He didn't. "Because someone did it for me once," he said. "Different injury, different war. A medic put his hands on my shoulder when I couldn't move it and refused to be amazed when I did. He made boredom holy. He didn't ask me to perform for his hope. He just stood next to mine. It changed the slope of my life. Victoria held his gaze until she felt something unfamiliar loosen behind her sternum. "Thank you for telling me," she said. After he left, the morning rushed her like it always did. Council, numbers, board members climbing in and out of her calendar with muddy shoes. She let half of it bounce and caught the rest. She refused to let Kite dictate the day's centre of gravity. When the investor call tried to become a referendum on standing, she made it a masterclass in strategy. When the blogger's rumour slid across a timeline, she posted a photograph of the mirror and wrote, "Work is not a scandal." The likes lit up as if people had been waiting for someone to something that's simple without apology. At dusk, she found 10 spare minutes and the courage to use them. She locked the office door, transferred to the table and set up the mirror herself, sloppy but serviceable. She watched her left toes in the right place and invited her right to learn the trick. It didn't move the first time, or the second. The third time, it remembered. She smiled, a small, private thing with no PR value, and wrote down the time. Micah texted at 8:41 p.m. Add a line to V.3. Visualize stairs, 3 steps only. No narrative, just feet. She replied, "Stairs are arrogant." He wrote back, "So are you." She stared at the word until she laughed. Then she booked the standing frame for 3 mornings, back to back, and told Mara to clear the half hour like it was a meeting with a head of state. In a way it was. That night, the city weather finally chose rain. It drummed against the glass and made the office feel smaller and safer. Victoria stood the mirror on her desk like a flag. She raised the desk 2 centimetres. She breathed into the back of her ribs. She did not pray. She did something harder for her. She permitted. And somewhere beneath scar and suspicion, the quiet machinery of repair kept working, not dazzled, not deterred, ordinary and relentless as dawn. The rumour broke at 8:12 a.m. A grainy photo on a finance blog with a caption that read like a smirk. Aurelia's CEO stands at dawn with her janitor. By 8:14, 3 reporters had emailed Mara for comment. By 8:20, Kite Capital's counsel forwarded the link to the board with a line about fiduciary concerns. Victoria stared at the pixelated image on her tablet, her hands gripping the standing frame, the faint outline of Micah's shoulder like a bracket in the background, and felt a slow, cool focus slide into place where panic might have lived. "Draft me options," she said. "Option 1, say nothing. Option 2, say what we're doing without apologizing. Option 3, hit back and make it ugly." Mara, already typing, didn't look up. "You want 2? "I want 2, Victoria said, and thumbed her desk down 2 centimetres, lungs widening like a door. Micah arrived with a new bag and the same unbothered gait, as if headlines didn't have teeth. Security paused him at the elevator bank. He held up his badge without rancour. When he cleared the door, he set a foldable pair of parallel bars near the window, the metal matte and plain and exactly what she wanted to see. Something built for work. "They're talking," she said. "They will until they find a new toy," he said. "Let's make progress while they get bored." "Your faith in the American attention span is quaint." "My faith is in repetition," he said, and slid the transfer board into place. "Consent check." "Yes." "Pain scale?" 3. She paused, honest even when it cost her pride. "Maybe 4. "Breath," he said, "back of ribs. Metronome at 60. Tick, tick, tick. The world got simple where the beats counted. Everything else could stand in line. He warmed her ankles with brisk friction, mapped sensation with cotton and cool metal, named the grid like he was reading back a coastline she half remembered. When he placed her palms on the bars, his touch was exact and unhurried, the kind that let her body decide to trust. "We're not walking today," he said, because he knew where her mind sprinted. "We're teaching weight to travel." "Story of my life," she muttered, but her voice came out steady. They leaned. It shouldn't have been terrifying. It was. Her weight flowed right, then left, a tide she couldn't fully command. Her right knee quivered, her head filled with heat. "Stop," she said, breath clipping. He did, instantly, easing the load until she could hear the metronome again. "What just happened?" she said, not answering, demanding. "Anti-gravity met your sympathetic nervous system," he said. They exchanged business cards. "That tremor is not failure, it's recruitment." "I loathe your cheerfulness." "This is me solemn," he said, and after a beat, she huffed a laugh she couldn't help. They reset. The second round went better, not because her muscles suddenly obeyed, but because he didn't ask them to be heroes. 2 centimetres forward, 2 centimetres back. He called out coordinates instead of compliments. She answered with breath instead of vows. On the 4th pass, her right foot lightened just enough that anyone else might have missed it. "I felt that," she said. "I felt it too," he said, and wrote the time in his head. At 7:36, the door cracked open and a man in a slate suit cleared his throat. "Miss Hale, do you have a minute?" "Mr. Vale," she said, suppressing the instinct to roll her eyes where he could see. Elliot Vale, board member, lifelong peacetime general who mistook other people's battles for his own. "You have 60 seconds. His gaze slid over the bars, over Micah, over her hands. "Optics are complicated." "Function is not," she said. "I'm concerned about liability." "So am I," she said. "That's why Mr. Grant uses consent protocols and doesn't let me skip steps when I'm angry." Vale recalculated, tried a different angle. "People may assume things. Let them assume I'm working." He took another breath, hunting for leverage, and found none that didn't cost him his reputation. "We'll talk at 10, he said, and left. Micah didn't move until the latch clicked. Then he said again. By 8, sweat had dampened her hairline, and the rumour had bloomed into 3 think pieces about leadership and disability, written by men who had never met their own limits. Victoria finished the last set, wiped her face with a small, not at all elegant towel, and said, "New rule. They can say what they want. I'll say what I've done." "What have you done?" he asked, an honest question, not a set-up. "I moved weight," she said. I told my nervous system the floor is still here." "Then say that," he said, out loud, somewhere they can't clip the sentence into whoever they want you to be. She stared at him, then at the mirror propped near the window like a spare truth. "Draft me a post," she told Mara a minute later. "No hashtags, no pity, 1 paragraph about work." The day didn't care about her victory. It stacked itself high. Lawyers, bankers, a journalist who had been fair once and was interested in being fair again if fairness performed. Victoria walked her mouth through strategy like she was unrolling maps. Under the table, her right foot hummed with the memory of movement like a phone on silent buzzing in a pocket. At noon, Dr. Annika Sen arrived, neuro-rehab attending, precise eyes sceptical in the productive way. She wasn't there to scold. She was there to check for harm they might not see. Victoria wanted to resent the interruption and ended up grateful for it. "Show me what you're doing," Dr. Sen said. Micah narrated the protocol. Mirror therapy baselines, breath mechanics, dermatomal mapping, metronome cues, dose limits, stop points. He used words like guard and scaffold, not challenge and push. Dr. Sen asked 3 hard questions and nodded at 3 good answers. "May I?" she asked, and tested reflexes with a practiced hand. When she reached the right toe and saw the small objective movement that didn't care about headlines, she smiled with only her eyes. "You have a responder," she said. "Time is your friend. Don't sprint." "Believe it or not," Victoria said dryly, "I'm capable of boring." "I believe you are capable of anything you decide to be," Dr. Sen said. Then softer to Micah, "Keep charting. Language matters, so does proof." When the door closed behind her, Victoria sat back and let her shoulders drop the distance of 2 centimetres without telling them to. "You didn't need her approval," she said. "I wanted her feedback," he said. "Approval is social. Feedback is structural." Mara slipped in with a tablet. "Post is live. It's doing numbers." "What did you write?" Micah asked. Victoria hesitated, then read aloud. "Work is not a scandal. Every day at dawn I practice breathing into the back of my ribs, mapping sensation, teaching weight to travel 2 centimetres and then 2 more. I am not a miracle story. I am a schedule. If you're building anything, company, body, life, you already know the truth. Repetition is power." Micah didn't say good. He just looked at her like he'd been waiting to hear what her voice sounded like when it wasn't asking for permission. The afternoon ambushed her with a sudden spike, pain grabbing her lower back like a fist. She rode it to a 6, then 7. Her vision narrowed. "Stop," she told herself, alone for once, and locked the door. She set the mirror on the desk and breathed until the numbers loosened. She texted Micah without pride. "Spasm. Advice?" His reply came in seconds. "Floor. 90-90 position. Back ribs, slow exhale, no heroics." She followed the words like a rope in a smoke-filled hallway. The spasm softened, not from defiance, but from patience. When the numbers slid back to 4, she pressed her palms to her eyes and laughed. One breath, one beat, because this too counted, choosing not to be brave until brave was useful. At 9:11 p.m, the office emptied of other people's urgency. Rain sheeted the windows. A private car idled 20 floors down, but the thought of being carried home felt like a headline she didn't want to read. When the knock came, a single courtesy knuckle, she knew it would be him. "You didn't have to come back," she said. "I didn't have to," he agreed, and set a paper bag on her desk. "Also, I brought soup." "What kind?" "Ancestral," he said. "Chicken, ginger, whatever my grandmother's hands believed in." She tasted it and swallowed heat in the memory of being taken care of without a ledger. They worked quietly, breath, mirror, a gentle reset of the day's edges. When her right foot missed the cue on the second attempt, she didn't snap at it. She invited. It listened on the third. "Micah," she said, when the quiet grew large enough for honesty, "we need to write the line down. In ink. Professional. Personal." "I know," he said. "I already did, in my head. It's a border with guards." "And if the border moves, then we move it together or we stop," he said. "No secrets that sabotage the work." She nodded. It shouldn't have felt like comfort. It did. "Tell me something true I don't know about you." He considered. "In Kandahar," he said, voice even, "I couldn't lift my right arm higher than my shoulder for 6 months. A medic named Ortiz made me pick up a cup every hour. He did not congratulate me once. The day I put it on a shelf above my head, he asked if I was going to wash it. I wanted to punch him. I would have missed. Then I laughed until I cried." She pictured a tent, dust, a cup that suddenly lived on a higher shelf. "Did you thank him later?" "I did," he said. "At his wedding. I cried into my punchline." The elevator pinged down the hall. The world crept back toward them from the edges. Victoria looked at the parallel bars, at the mirror reflecting a future she was allowed to practice before she owned it. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," he echoed, packing with the same neat ritual that made boredom holy. They reached the door at the same time. For one suspended second, their hands brushed at the handle. The contact was nothing, was everything. He stepped back first. The line stayed ink. He left her with the soup and the metronome and a city that had finally gone quiet. She rolled to the window and placed her palm against the glass. Far below, a lone runner in a neon jacket took a corner in the rain, a small, stubborn human in a world too large to notice. She watched him move and thought, not of standing, not of headlines, but of weight travelling where she told it to go, 2 centimetres at a time. Her phone buzzed. A new email. Access change request. Grant Micah. She opened it and felt a new kind of cold run under her skin. Someone had submitted a ticket to revoke his building clearance. She stared at the screen until the tremor in her hand passed. Then she forwarded the request to Mara with 2 words, "Deny it." And then she added 2 more. "Find out." Tomorrow would be work. Tonight, she breathed. The metronome ticked. The soup cooled. The rain held the building like a hand. The badge reader blinked red on Micah's first swipe, then again on his second. Security at the 50th floor vestibule traded a look, the kind that says we didn't start this fire, but we'll warm our hands. He lifted his duffel a little higher on his shoulder, every part of him telegraphing care. Calm voice, empty palms, union-neutral smile. "Mr. Grant," the guard said, "your access shows revoked." Micah didn't argue. He'd learned, in places where arguments got loud fast, that the body listens to tone more than words. "May we call upstairs?" he asked. "Miss Hale expects me." Before the guard could answer, the elevator chimed and opened. Victoria rolled out alone, hair in a loose knot, blouse unbuttoned, one confession lower than a board photo would allow. It wasn't optics. It was oxygen. She looked at the reader, then at Micah, then at the guard, and the temperature of the hallway changed without rising. "Escort him," she told security. "Then send me the ticket. I want the chain of custody by noon." "Yes, ma'am." She didn't turn until the vestibule doors closed behind them. "Mara found it," she said, voice level because rage squandered breath. "Facilities submitted an access rationalization after stakeholder concerns. The stakeholder email routes through Vale's assistant and a burner domain registered last night." Micah swallowed what he wanted to say. "I'm here," he answered instead, because that was the only true sentence that mattered at 6 a.m. "Good," she said. Let's spend this anger where it pays. They moved like soldiers who'd learned each other's steps. Break the chair, slide the transfer board, palms down, lean, glide, breath before everything. He set the metronome at 60 and positioned the mirror. She watched her left toes in the right's place and invited her right foot to mimic the lie until it became a truth. It did, not immediately, not obediently, but enough to write down. Parallel bars after this, he said. We're not walking, she said, automatic. We're letting weight travel, he said, automatic, and she breathed through the need to argue until there was no need. They strapped her knees. He placed her hands. The bars were cold, then not. 2 centimetres forward, he said, 2 back, head tall, ribs wide. They rocked. Her right foot caught, trembled, learned. He pressed a palm lightly against her shin when he felt her ankle search. Here, he said so quietly it was almost a secret. Land here. It did, a fractional unload, a whisper of clearance. She didn't yelp. She didn't cry. She let her breath carry the information through her system like a memo marked urgent and practical. On the 7th pass, the foot did it again, a hair higher, a shade steadier. Mara slid in, tablet against her ribs like a shield. Ticket chains in your inbox, she said. Facility says they acted on a director's verbal instruction in the interest of safety. Victoria didn't look away from the bar. Schedule the emergency board session for 10, she said. Invite counsel. Bring the HR policy on medical accommodations and the whistleblower clause. We'll catch blowback, Mara warned, not to dissuade, but to document. We'll give it back, Victoria said. Micah's hand rested a breath above her forearm. Pause, he offered. Not yet, she said. She felt the anger thrum and chose not to spend it on shaking. The metronome ticked. The city bled into gold. At 7:11, he lowered her. She sat, sweat warming the back of her neck, muscles humming like they'd remembered a song. Again tomorrow, she said. Again, he echoed, already cataloguing which fibres had whispered yes. 10 a.m, boardroom A. Glass on 3 sides, art that performed restraint, a view of a city so expensive it could pretend it wasn't watching. Elliot Vale sat on the long side, his tie the exact colour of plausible deniability. Counsel for the board arranged papers in fan stacks that suggested generosity. Dr. Annika Sen occupied a chair near the end, invited at Victoria's request. Micah wasn't in the room. He'd packed the duffel and gone to class, because his work wasn't this work and his line was ink. Victoria rolled to the head of the table, braked, squared herself to the room, and lowered the desk 2 centimetres until her ribs widened. Before we discuss Kite's revised offer, she said, we'll address the attempt to revoke access for a contractor essential to my rehabilitation. Silence rearranged itself into attention. She tapped the tablet. The screen behind her filled with a clean stack of emails and a request history that read like a delicate scandal. Facilities denies responsibility beyond process, she said, and cites a verbal instruction from a director. The instruction originated with Mr. Vale's office and was relayed through an untraceable alias registered last night. Mr. Vale? Vale adjusted his cufflink like it had misbehaved. Miss Hale, my office had concerns about liability. You attempted to remove a medical accommodation by anonymous request, she said. That is not a liability mitigation. That is a liability. Counsel cleared his throat. Let's slow down the language. We can slow the adjectives, she said, but not the facts. She tapped again. Board policy on accommodations places decision-making with HR and medical advisors, not with any single director. Our whistleblower policy prohibits retaliation against any employee or contractor for raising concerns about safety or misconduct. Mr. Grant raised neither. He was targeted because he is associated with me and because a rumour made some of you nervous. Murmurs. Dr. Sen leaned forward just enough to be seen. For the record, she said, Miss Hale's program is evidence-based and supervised. Removing her therapist by stealth would jeopardize her functional progress and, arguably, her fitness to lead your precious quarterly calls. The yaw landed without ceremony. Someone at the far end of the table coughed into a hand that wasn't hiding anything. Vale tried another door. No one questions your recovery, he said, with the tone of a man who questioned it in 9 emails. But leadership is also about optics. Then look, Victoria said, and set her palms on the armrests. Watch weight travel. She didn't stand. She didn't need the theatre. She breathed, widened her ribs, rolled forward 2 centimetres and held. Her voice stayed steady. "You hired me to make the hard calls. Here is one. We will not sell. We will not permit sabotage disguised as prudence. We will not allow anonymous meddling in medical accommodations. And we will stop acting as if disability is a PR problem instead of a fact inside our walls." Mara slid a document across the table. "Motion to censure Director Vale for process violations," she said. "Motion to formalize an accommodations oversight group that includes medical and HR." The CEO of a sovereign fund raised a hand. "Seconded," she said, surprising herself and then deciding not to apologize for it. Vale's mouth formed the beginnings of a protest. He saw the arithmetic in the room and let his jaw close. They voted. The motion carried. Censure, oversight, the quiet reshaping of a power that had mistaken itself for protection. Council wrote something on a legal pad that looked like relief wearing a tie. "Now," Victoria said, sitting back as pain peaked, then slid from a 6 to a 5 to a 4, "let's discuss Kite. We reject. We announce expansion in Asia on our schedule, not theirs. And we do it with numbers, not noise." The business moved like a machine that had just had a necessary part replaced. When the session ended, directors approached to murmur variations on brave and inspiring, words she filed under not useful. The Sovereign Fund CEO lingered. "I have a son with a spinal cord injury," she said quietly. "He will like your post." Victoria's mouth softened. "Tell him it's not a miracle," she said. "It's a schedule." The rumour storm burned itself to embers by evening. Victoria sat alone in the corner office, the city purpling at the edges. She locked the door, set the mirror and texted, "You're cleared." 6 a.m. as usual. Micah replied, "Copy." Add V.4, wait shift to step, guarded, no heroics. She set the metronome and watched her left toes stand in for her right. On the 4th cycle, the right foot lifted a shade higher than morning. On the 5th, it didn't. She wrote it down anyway, honesty as practice. The knock came, one courtesy tap, then the door opening only when she said, "Enter." He set the duffel down, just to the left of where it always rested. Habit is a kind of temple. "You shouldn't be here after that," she said. She meant after that vote, after that room. "I should be exactly where the schedule says," he said. "We don't let other people's emergencies pick our reps." She gestured to the parallel bars. "Tomorrow," she said, "we try the thing." "We try the beginning of the thing," he corrected. "Language is a brace." He was right. He had been right too often to resent it. She looked at him, at the line they had drawn in ink. "I know what you did today," she said. "You stayed out of the room." "Professionals don't hand their patients their reputations to carry," he said. "Also, your boardroom has lousy chairs." She laughed, then covered her mouth like she had said something inappropriate and decided not to be that woman anymore. "Tell me what it will feel like," she said. "The step," he thought for a second. "Like a small betrayal of gravity," he said. "Like handing trust to a joint and having it hand it back." "Poet," she accused. "Broom philosopher," he corrected. They set the bars, marked the floor with a strip of blue tape exactly the length of a hopeful half-step. Dr. Sen wasn't there. The first of a thing didn't always need witnesses. He checked every strap twice. "Consent?" "Yes." "Pain?" 3. "Breath?" She breathed. He cued the weight shift. Her right foot lifted a fraction, higher than morning, lower than dreams. Her hip found the angle. Her ankle stuttered. His palm hovered at her shin, a promise not to catch her so much as to point her to where catching could happen. "Now," he said, voice low. "Invite it. Not the step. The beginning." She did, and the world obliged an inch. The foot slid forward to kiss the blue tape. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't clean. It landed. She exhaled, a sound that wasn't triumph but relief. He didn't cheer. He wrote the time in his head and then, because he was human, let his eyes crinkle at the edges. "Again?" he asked, she said. They did 3 beginnings. One landed, one wobbled and retreated, one almost fell and didn't. Each one counted, because schedules don't only count the days that gleam. When he lowered her and unbuckled the straps, the room settled around them, less like a stage, more like a workshop. Outside, the city's lights drew tidy equations across the glass. "About the border," she said, the words surprising her by arriving. He looked up, perfectly still. "It holds," he said, "until it doesn't, and when it moves we will move it in daylight with language and consent and no sabotage." She felt something like gratitude and something like fear suture themselves into a stronger cloth. "Good," she said. Because I am not done choosing what kind of leader I get to be, or what kind of woman. He nodded once as if they had added a new line to a protocol and the program had just updated itself. He packed the duffel. He set the metronome on her desk and did not take it with him. At the door he paused. 2 centimeters, he said. I know, she said. When he left, she rolled to the glass and laid her palm against the city. Her reflection looked back, a thick, curvy, unapologetically sexy woman in a chair that had tried to tell her who she was, and now only told the truth about where she sat. She pictured that blue tape. She pictured the inch it had asked of her, and the inch she'd given. Tomorrow, the rumour would find a new shape. Tomorrow, Kite would try again. Tomorrow, Elliot Vale would decide whether to apologise or calcify. Tomorrow, the schedule would still be the schedule. She switched off the lamp. The city's light took its place. In the dark window she could almost see it. Weight travelling, trust handed back, gravity betrayed just enough to learn a new rule. Again, she said into the quiet, and the room, the ribs, the stubborn foot all agreed.